Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Thomas's Reading Room. We have been reading from Thomas's book, Trip Across the Pond, Personal Vietnam Experience, publisher Bentworth Press, and the author Thomas Kipling again. That's me. And we have done the chapters before, Bait for the Enemy, Fort Ord for Riley, and now we're doing Train to Oakland, Troop Carrier to Vietnam. So let's get started. I want to tell you that this is going to be in two videos. This is a more of a lengthy chapter, so I'm going to do this first part and then you go to the next video, which will be the second part. So it will be labeled Part 1 and Part 2. Okay, let's go. During the 30-day leave, much of my time was spent with family and close friends. Although we did not know should we ever see each other again, we enjoyed ourselves immensely and partied much of the time. When going out with my friends and meeting with other people, my friends would let them know that I would be leaving for Vietnam. In a way, it could be construed as something special, though after people learned of me going to Vietnam, no one said any more about it. Being at a young age, things weren't taken seriously by me, and it seemed to have been outside everything that was absorbed, experienced. Everything seemed so distant to me. When it came time to leave, Father and Mother took me back to Camp Forsyth by way of car. The trip was a good drive, giving us more time together, and we enjoyed it to a great degree. Arriving at Camp Forsyth, Father drove up to the barracks where I had resided. The three of us spent a few moments together, then the time came to part, as it so often does. It was difficult for Mother and Father to leave, as they knew it may be the last time we would be together. Perhaps their drive back home would be a good thing. We bid each other a final farewell. Then I got out of the car and walked into the barracks, without looking back. I observed a few soldiers had already returned, though the barracks still seemed empty to me. It was the first part of December, the weather was becoming colder, and it meant that Christmas would be spent on the water, somewhere between the United States and Vietnam. I walked outside and around the company area, then I went over to the beer hall and met with a few people I knew. A song was invented by a couple of soldiers, and a few of us would sing it now and then. It went something like, "Jingle bells and motor shells we see all the way. Oh, what fun it'd be to ride in a tank on Christmas Day," etc. The next couple of weeks, many soldiers had to do some meaningless duties to keep busy. I spent much of the time at the motor pool and in town, where a group of us did much drinking. Some soldiers did not make it back to camp during the night, though the company commander, who recently returned from Vietnam, did not create any waves, as far as many of us soldiers were concerned. He was a super good man. We had to get our shot records brought up to date, and 6 shots were required before entering that enchanted paradise, Vietnam. Hell, there were diseases, bacteria, or whatever in Vietnam that we did not have any names for or knew anything about. We could take the 6 shots any way we chose, and I chose to take 3 in each arm simultaneously. Both arms not only became enlarged, they also became sore and painful. I also experienced a fever, lasting about 1 week. One day we had a meeting in the barracks upstairs with a second lieutenant who was in charge of us. We gathered around him, and he gave us the lowdown on how and when we would be leaving. He made mention that some of us may not be coming back, and for a few moments there was a silence. Although many of us were young, and we probably lacked the experience to comprehend the seriousness of what it meant that some of us would not be coming back, we still sensed the aura that goes with death. The time came to leave Fort Riley, Camp Forsyth, and board a troop train at Junction City, Kansas, bound for Oakland, California, December 10th, 1966. There was approximately 2,000 of us soldiers aboard that train, and each of us was fully dressed for combat, including rifle and ammo. The train had a few dining cars, some day cars, scenic cars, and berth cars. 2 soldiers were assigned to each berth. Inside the berth was 2 bunks, a toilet, and a sink. A soldier by the name of Mike from San Bruno, California, who I had become friends with, shared a berth with me. He was a person that seemed to know how to express himself in a way that seemed comical, and looked very much like a known comedian who had thick eyebrows and smoked cigars. There was not much to do other than sleep, eat, talk, play cards, and walk from car to car. We received 3 meals a day, and I entertained the thoughts that the government taxpayer was paying top dollar for them. Later, someone made mention that each meal cost approximately $3.85. At that time, I thought it was much money for the kind of meal we had received. When the train stopped Each time, for whatever, guards were placed at each exit entranceway, not only to keep protesters or anyone else from coming aboard. It was mainly to keep any soldiers that may have been entertaining thoughts of going AWOL, away without leave, aboard the train. As we journeyed, the countryside was observed, the scenery. It was simply beautiful, and perhaps I should have enjoyed it more. However, I was tense as well as everyone else, and that restricted the enjoyment to some extent. The journey took 2 days and 2 nights. Going through the Rockies, there was much snow, and the train moved at speeds of 5 to 10 miles per hour. It was late in the afternoon when we moved along the edge of the east bay of Oakland, California, and into the Oakland Army Terminal. The night had greeted us. Everyone got off the train and walked into a warehouse. We received some assignments, where we would be staying on a ship, the USS Patch, that we were about to board. We were informed that everyone was to stay below deck until the next day when we would set sail. In another warehouse was many duffel bags with tags attached to them. They were shipped via boxcars. Without too much difficulty, I found my duffel bag, picked it up, and headed for the ship. We learned right away that you did not call a ship a boat. Should you be in the Navy, you would get into trouble easily if caught doing so. It was not too difficult locating the living quarters that all PFCs and lower grades E1, E2 would be occupying. All we had to do was walk to the bottom of the ship. The Specialty 4s got rooms 1 floor above us that had 2 bunk beds, a toilet and sink, 2 men to a room. Our living quarters at the bottom of the ship were simpler. We had 2 poles that 12 cots were attached to by chains, 6 cots on each side. They were so close together. When we wanted to turn over, we had to crawl out and then crawl back in. At the end of the ship was a latrine, showers, and a washroom. Also on the ship was a barber shop, if you needed a haircut, and a PX where we could shop for food, trinkets, gifts, etc. The USS Patch, I was told, had given over 22 years of service, and this voyage would be its last. More than likely, it probably would be sold to another country. The USS Patch had been employed by the United States government as a troop carrier, and its crew members were merchant mariners. On the afternoon of December 13, 1966, 2,000 soldiers and the ship's crew members went up to the deck of the USS Patch. The few tugboats began pulling the USS Patch out into the channel of the bay. As we set sail toward the Golden Gate Bridge, we observed San Francisco standing in its glory. Its many tall skyscrapers reaching to the sky, its hills, Fisherman's Wharf, Coit Tower, and its many piers. Damn, San Francisco is beautiful. Simply beautiful. It was as if San Francisco was saying, "Farewell, boys, come back. And when you do, you won't be boys anymore. You will be men, and the world will bless you for your sacrifices given for not only your country, for your mother, father, family, all of us. Farewell." We sailed under the Golden Gate Bridge out into the Pacific Ocean. The USS Patch rumbled, vibrated to the point that we did not know whether it was going to keep going or not. Some of us were taking bets whether the ship would stay afloat. A few miles out, I observed on both sides of the ship there were soldiers heaving their meals. The ship would lean to one side, and all I could see was the blue sky and the seagulls that was traveling with us. And the ship would lean to the other side, and all I could see was water and small fish flying out of the water and back into it. Simultaneously, the front of the ship would go high into the sky, then it would drop down into the water. Well, almost. Best described, a rock and rolling ride for 18 days with only one break in between, Okinawa. There were 2 meals served each day. Regardless what time of the day you wanted to eat, you would have to stand in line, as there was a line 24 hours a day. I certainly did not have much of an appetite, and I never once heaved what I ate over either side of the ship. However, my stomach was always upset, churning, and the equilibrium was always out of balance. At the bottom of the ship, where we bunked and spent a good degree of our time, it was hotter than the ideology of hell. We would perspire easily, and there was little breeze, if any. After a day or 2 on the ship, there came the sensations through the field of the mind, like living in Alice in Wonderland, living in a dream world. Nothing seemed real to me. When observing other soldiers, some would be playing cards, others seemed as if they were floating around, and some would be attempting exercises at the front of the ship. Everything seemed like it was part of a movie, with me being outside it, observing everything in its totality. Soldiers were attempting to do exercises on the front deck. Can you imagine that? There was an officer attempting to get those soldiers to do exercises? The front of the ship was going up and down, side to side simultaneously, and those soldiers were attempting to do jumping jacks. The exercise is, for those that are not familiar, jumping into the air, raising the arms above the head, clapping the hands, and spreading the feet simultaneously. Craziest and funniest thing I'd ever seen. Not once during the voyage was there any participation from me. Simply put, it was not for everyone. The schedule laid out for me was to do exercises every morning, classes each day, and detail every third day. I never did get those proposed exercises, as Mike and I managed to get lost somewhere on the ship. Detail was working in the butcher shop, meat department. It was located at the front and bottom of the ship. There was a small elevator that started at the deck below the top deck and went down to the butcher shop. The floor of the butcher shop was metal, and it had a coating of some kind of transparent material to keep it from rusting. Two of us would wait for the butcher to prepare the meat and place the meat in large metal pans, shaped like gigantic bowls. The two of us would slide the bowls onto the elevator, right to the floor of the mess hall, and slide the bowls to the kitchen. That was all that was required of us. Now folks, this is the end of this video, the conclusion, and the next video just below, part 2, will be the continuation and the conclusion of chapter 3, Train to Oakland, Troop Carrier to Vietnam. Thanks for listening, folks, and please listen to the rest. Thank you.